Hi, welcome to iPad Exchange number 6, where we talk about learning with iPads in elementary school, middle school, high school, or university, wherever you happen to have them. So my name is Marcello Mongardi. I work in Oman at TASEM, the American International School of Muscat, and I'm a middle school technology integrator, and we are one-to-one with iPads. This is our second year. Mike?
I'm Mike Hoffman, and I'm also at the American School here in Muscat, Oman. I work with the elementary, so I have KG through grade 5. We're one-to-one in 3, 4, 5, and then K1 and 2, we have a shared cart model as well as keeping between 5 and 7 permanently in the room as well. So it's our first year in the one-to-one upper grade, so that's kind of the biggest change for us this year.
Gary?
I'm Gary Coyle, and I'm the Director of Technology at the American Embassy School in New Delhi, and we are currently in our second year of a one-to-one program in grades 1 through 5. We're in the third year of a one-to-one program in grades 6 to 8 that are both iPad-based, and then we also have a one-to-one laptop program in our high school that's in its second year also. And then in terms of our pre-K and kindergarten kids, we have 9 iPads in each classroom, but the ability to put together classroom sets and get one device into any kid's hand at any point.
Danny?
Hi, I'm Danny. I'm from WBIS. That's the Israel International School in Israel. This year we deployed one-to-one in first and second grade. I work in the technology department. I don't work in a specific school. We're in charge of the work with with 3 schools, with the elementary, middle, and high school. In elementary school, we have one-to-one in first and second grades, and we have a class part of 10 iPads in a classroom. It's about 1 iPad per 2 students in kindergarten and third grade. And that's what we have for iPads. And our challenges this year are, first of all, to really, because it's our first year with one-to-one, is to really see the progress and get the teachers on board and really involved and put as much content as we can on the iPads. Also make sure that all the content that we create here goes outside the community to the parents, so everybody can actually get feedback from what's going on in the classes, what's going on with the iPads. And that's pretty much our goals for this year.
Yeah, back to David. Perseverance, you made it.
Hey, I made it. I actually had to work on our firewall in order to get Google Hangouts to work. And we don't have a network person really, so I had to fix the firewall, so it took me a few minutes.
Well, we're in the middle of introductions, so tell us all who you are and where you work.
Yeah, well, most of you know who I am, actually. Hey, Gary.
Hey, David.
Hey, Ben.
What's up?
What's up? I'm David Beatty. I'm the Director of Technology at the International School of Stavanger. And
Did you have iPads there?
And we have iPads here. We have a one-to-one iPad program in our middle school and high school. And the elementary uses iPads, but they're not one-to-one yet. So got a lot of iPads floating around. We've had this program. This is the 3rd year of the program. So it's a lot of interesting stuff going on. I'm not sure it was rolled out in the best way. A lot of people, they're kind of around, but people are like, oh yeah, those iPads, all the kids are carrying them, aren't they? And So we have some work to do in terms of making sure teachers are really connected to the program and that sort of thing. Anyway, that's a snapshot of me and what's going on.
All right, and Ben.
All right, I'm Ben Sheridan. I'm here in Lexington, Kentucky. Actually, Dave Beatty's hometown, I think. It's funny because we hung out a little bit a couple months ago here in Kentucky. I am a doc student at the University of Kentucky in the Educational Leadership and Technology program. We are a one-to-one household here. That's about as much as I can say with that. Although my wife just last Friday told me she found out they have iPads at her school, and they were kind of stuck in a room uncharged, and she'd asked me if I'd come in and help her team get up and going with using them. And so I'm pretty excited about that, and they seem pretty fired up about it. Nobody seems to know, like no one's in charge of them. There's no protocol for getting them or storing them or getting apps on them or anything like that. So I may have a little bit of knowledge on getting stuff like that going, so I'm excited to get in there and see what we can do.
Awesome. When I talk, do I appear on your screen, or is it still David right now?
You appear.
Oh, good. I mean, not good because it's me. Good because the camera's moving around. So we were going to, the sort of agenda was just kind of to catch up and get this whole thing rolling again and talk about what we see as being ahead of us this year. It's a new year. It's a different year. We're all 1 year further along on our path. And then to add to it, we had 5, I think, iPad exchanges last year. But you know, Ben's in a new position. Gary's at the same place in a different position. David's in a completely new position. Brian's in a new position. How long have you been there, Danny?
This is my 3rd year at the school, but the first year with Brian, and iPads just started coming in like last year.
Right.
So this is our
great thing about.
Sorry, this is our first really trying to deploy iPads, and I think I don't remember who said it before that we started rolling them out, but haven't really created a system in advance to deploy, and this is our challenge now, to really make sure that they're being used in the right way and to their maximum potential.
I think one kind of cool thing about us talking about iPads is that no one's more than 3 years along the road, right? Because they're iPads, they haven't been around that long, so we're all kind of in the same neighborhood as far as our experiences. Does anyone want to start off with, I mean, what you see the big challenges are? Or goals for you in your position?
I can state my goals. I think I said it, and really beyond the tool that we have, we want to get something extra out of it that we didn't have before. That means that now that kids have a device that is constantly with them, that the work that they're doing can be shared with the community, and also it can be kept for them to kind of build maybe start, I'm talking about elementary school yet, but start to build like something of a portfolio of how do you progress through the years and stuff that you did on 2nd and 3rd grade, then you'll see it later when you're in 7th grade. You might want to revisit some of it and like get your take on what you used to be like as a kid or something like that.
I think, I mean, carry on.
No, go ahead, Martel.
I find that very interesting because that's the two things that I find myself thinking a lot about as far as us being being in our second year of roles, which is sharing, making this global, this possibility of sharing your work with other learners and other, let's say, student experts in the field that you're studying. That's now really, really possible. But doing that in a sort of organic, real way, that's one challenge I think we're looking at, is to find the opportunities to do that and the structures to do that with other students. And then the second thing is this sort of, I was giving 6th graders, setting them up with blogs, and there's some Omani 6th graders who they'll graduate from this school. And when they leave, they got their blogs in 5th grade, so they'll have 7 years of learning place. And that's kind of remarkable, you know, if they're going to be applying to college and just the URL to their TASEN blog is going to be one of the sort of references that they give. That is kind of amazing, you know. And so really making that valuable for them and getting them to see the value in it and committing to it is a goal of ours as well.
But isn't that like a real-world skill, as we say? You know, we always want to talk about making connections to reality, because like each one of us has a portfolio, you could call it, or digital footprint, you'd say. And so when we apply to a job, we put our Twitter handle, our blog, you know, all these different things that represent the work that we've done. So no longer is it, you know, tell me what you've done or what you can do. It's show me what you've done and show me how you've done it. So I think that's pretty huge.
Right. Yeah. I
One
saw
of the goals that we have.
A short article today about, there's a college now that it's a small college, but their admissions is 2 pieces of work and a 1-minute video. That's what they ask for. So no test scores or anything like. It's like almost like trying to get into the Google Teacher Academy, you know.
Yeah.
That's what they ask for from students.
Mike, what were you going to say?
One of the goals that we have now that we're 1-to-1 in 3rd through 5th is to get students and teachers more comfortable staying with the iPad more consistently than necessarily going and booking other resources like laptop carts and that, and just getting more comfortable, you know, keyboarding within the iPad, or you know, just trying to stay within the apps that are there to build things out, and just use it in a more natural way rather than booking time slots and looking for resources and that. So in the first 3 weeks, it's been a huge change on the amount of work that they've gotten done, just because that 1-to-1, it's there, and you don't have to plan around a calendar, and it's, you know, it just comes up. They're already finding it than it was ever before. So we're going to try to figure out how to manage that, and then get it in meaningful ways, and you know, hopefully just continue on making it a natural part of education here.
Mike, can I ask a question around that? Sorry if I'm butting in.
Please.
People. But actually, I want to ask everybody this, but you kind of made me think about it. So when you're looking at making the iPads more of a focus, and say not so much laptop-based instruction or the kind of defaulting to the laptop, have the teachers, or has there been discussion around changing the learning spaces to suit something like that? Because like a traditional desk in rows lends itself more to maybe it's sort of like a laptop thing where, you know, you have that screen in front of you and there's that like little one-on-one personal environment with the machine. Whereas like an iPad is such a social device, and I think we've talked about this before, where it's just kind of flat, and no matter who you hand it to, it self-orientates itself. So it lends itself much more to like a collaborative sort of group work environment. So has there been any like thought to changing up learning spaces in classrooms, or using spaces? One of the things I saw last year, especially the second part of the year, there was so much group work going on outside of the classrooms. Like the hallways were always full, And these collaborative spaces where they have couches and tables and such, were always had kids in them, like every single period of the day. You could walk around and you could see learning happening everywhere. And I don't think that if the kids had a laptop, it would have lent itself that much, or if they didn't have that ability to move into new spaces or change the spaces, because a lot of teachers move to couches, bean bags with a couple tables, very few desks in the room, etc. So has there been any discussion around like the space thing? Because I think that can be a pretty powerful kind of change agent.
Yeah, that's a good point. We haven't had any formal, at least in the elementary, about addressing how to create the spaces. The teachers are finding and are getting really mindful of that, as well as just starting to make accommodations within the room. But the tables that we still have and maybe need or necessarily don't need is something that we should probably have a meaningful talk about. The hallways here too are full throughout the day now. In fact, the other year, once we started getting more of the iPads and the devices, kids wanted to get out of the room and work in the hallway. And then the network, the IT guy said, here I put all these access points into the classrooms, and now you're not sitting in the classrooms anymore. So it was kind of tongue in cheek, but it really spoke to the point that that learning is just all over the building. It's not contained in the class like it was before.
Session, 3 hour session. Yeah, and the maker with retro media concept of the teacher, and then the students are the second teacher, and then the room is the third teacher. And so her whole the way she launched the workshop was, does your room help to teach, and how would you redesign your room in order to have it more conducive to the way your students learn, etc., etc. So it was interesting. It was interesting to, how they might be different if we were to think of the space as part of the learning.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really a lot up to the teacher, and I see a lot of teachers that during the year, already last year when we started putting iPads in the classrooms, they started changing not only seating orders, but started building more group-like rooms, or some of the rooms are more, well, they just change it whenever they feel like. If they feel that that they need something that is more group-oriented, then they'll change it to that. They want something that is more frontal. Sometimes they change it like every other week. I see like changes in the rooms. But it really depends on the teacher, and I think it's a real good discussion to have with all the teachers that are now in a one-to-one environment, or in a lab, or in a iPad environment, and didn't have that environment before. How does that affect the class, and how would the structure of the class affect the learning in this instance?
Yeah, I think it's all part of the whole package of innovating as a teacher, and that's innovating with your space, with your use of technology, with your pedagogy, with the way that you're approaching your content area. And I think sometimes it's tough to tease one variable out as the driver, other than like Danny was saying, it really is the teacher. Without a teacher that has an innovative vision and an innovative mindset, you put them in a creative space, it's not going to be utilized. You give them a device, it's not going to, change learning. It's, really how can we work with our teachers to help them buy into a progressive vision of education. And I think that kind of fits in with, one of our goals this year at AES with, with the work that we've done so far is, we've got tremendous pockets of innovation going on within each of the three divisions. How do we make that innovation more systemic, and how do you, how do you get people to buy into that in an international school, especially when you have issues with, significant amounts of teacher turnover from year to year, administrative turnover, things like that. We're going to spend a fairly significant amount of our time, again this year, working with our tech facilitators and our curriculum people to have all of those voices at the table during unit planning. I think that, using that TPAC model and, having the strong content, the progressive pedagogy, and then matching technology with it, can really, yield some positive benefits for student learning.
Hey Gary, can you talk a little bit about what you guys are doing with your Office of Learning, how you kind of connected the dots there and kind of brought everybody kind of in the conversation into one space?
Yeah, and I think that that's really already starting to pay some big benefits, Ben, even, 9 weeks into school or whatever. So the idea was, instead of having, curriculum and technology and assessment and, our data people in separate places throughout the school, we created the Office of Learning, and in that Office of Learning we have the Director of Curriculum and Professional Learning, Jess Krieger. We have the two divisional curriculum people, Robin Ibrahim and Meacham Purnell, and myself as the Director of Technology with an Ed Tech focus, and then our data and assessment person, Emily Roberts, all in that same location. And so, it's that it's the idea that Apple promotes in the way that they design their campus. By putting people in proximity, you just naturally have conversations. And, not a day goes by where, we're not talking about something that pulls in, data or assessment or technology or curriculum. And just, the physical space, again, is really important. But equally important is having the people that are willing to have those conversations.
Yeah. Are you there in the Office of Learning right now, Gary? Where are you sitting?
I am.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Just curious. I haven't seen that room, so the converted space.
I'll spin the. If you guys want to indulge me for a second, I'll just spin the camera around. I'll need to turn some lights on. So, kind of right behind me now is where Jessica would be, and Meacham and Robin, and so we're all within, a Nerf dart of each other. Emily's office is over here, and then the support people are, sitting kind of on the opposite side of the room. The other feature of the Office of Learning that gets used every day is the Learning Lab, and it's, just a small collaborative space where, people from different, parts of the school and departments and grade levels will come in and, just work and collaborate, and it's super convenient because you can, just step in, and if you need a curriculum person or, myself or, someone from data and everything, we're all just, a stone's throw away.
Yeah, that's cool. It turned out really well, didn't it? It looks nice.
Where did that come from, that concept or idea? I mean, how did that start?
David, you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I think at a few different schools we're doing something like that with this Office of Learning. I know that ISB Beijing was doing something like that as well. So Stacy Stevens, who was there last year, I think she really kicked off that conversation about, hey, what do you think of this concept? And so she and I talked a lot about it, and then Gary and the rest of that Office of Learning, it just became a whole conversation. We talked a lot about space and how we're going to use space and whose space we're going to take over. So that was probably the most difficult part of that conversation. I mean, I think everybody was sort of convinced that it was the way to go. It was just a matter of, okay, whose room can we, take over and make this Office of Learning? So there's a couple of schools that are doing something like that. I think it's Tarek who at ISB, who I heard talk about it about 2 years ago at a conference. It wasn't the main subject of our conversation, of his presentation, but it was just a piece of something that the school had done. So anyway, I love the idea. I really do like it a lot, and I'm glad it's working out for you guys. That's cool.
David, what about so your iPads in Norway?
Yeah, one of our big themes this year
Fill us
is
in.
is going to be program assessment, because I can tell just from the beginning of this year that as the program was brought in, it really hasn't been sort of maintained, if that makes sense. So a lot of people are wondering, what's happening with this, and it's a funny thing to be 3 years in and to be new to the program. So I'm still doing a little work on trying to find out about the history of the program and why the decisions were made and how and all that sort of thing. But this is definitely, despite all those little details, it's definitely a year where we're looking at the program, trying to figure out, like, where are we going with this. There's actually a decent amount of pressure in our high school to use laptops instead of iPads. So, I mean, I love iPads, and so I know the device, but I also know the one-to-one laptop program, as we did back in Delhi, and the high school chose laptops. Anyway, so there's some interesting history there, and I have to try to help this school go through that process themselves and decide what they want to do in the future. 3 years in is not that old, but it is old enough that they ought to be. It ought to be just like, I feel like it ought to just be pretty seamless by now. Like, everybody's using the device and everybody's comfortable with the device and that sort of thing. But it still doesn't have really that feeling to me. There's a lot of kids that bring in their own laptops and sort of just use the iPads every once in a while. And I mean, we all know that the iPad is a complementary device. I mean, probably all of us here are using a laptop and an iPad at the same time. So we're going to be trying to figure out the balance of laptop versus iPad, and as a school, is it enough that they just have iPads, or do we want to include laptops in that scenario? And so that's going to be one of our big themes for the year is program assessment, and I think also PD, that some of the other of you guys have mentioned as well. Just trying to make sure that people are comfortable using the devices. And one of the interesting things in Europe is the timeline is different. It's like 4 o'clock, people just clock out and walk out the door. So you don't have that. You don't have as much time. People aren't as, it's not they're not committed to the job, but it's a different feeling. It's like it is more of just a job. So people will stay for about 20 minutes after school, and then if you run a PD, they'll just walk out the door. Not all of them will. Some of them will stay forever, but there's definitely people that are like, all right, they're checking their watch, like, I'm on the clock here. So that's been an interesting thing. So working on PD, we're going to look at, kind of think outside the box and figure out some different models for that. Whether it's getting release time for teachers, or just working out some sort of schedule where we can actually get some more of that time with teachers. And not necessarily iPad related, but we're working a lot on our tech integrators, because it's a small school, and they have not really invested in tech integrators or tech coaches that much. So there's really one person who has 80% release time for the school of 700, and they teach some classes as well. So really trying to think creatively in terms of how tech integration can work with really limited resources, and as Gary and Ben know in Delhi, and I don't know what everybody else's situation is like, but we had a great team of tech integrators, and now granted we had more people as well, I mean more students as well, but just thinking creatively about how to actually do tech integration work when you're limited in your number of staff. So that's going to be an interesting challenge. I'm getting an echo on my side. I don't know if that's my mic or
Yeah.
one of you guys.
the dub version of this, the iPad Extreme.
Yeah, no kidding.
What is going on?
The iPad laptop discussion has, just for me, just because I just came in from a fairly disastrous iPad, blogging with the iPad, trying to do stuff that's better off done on a laptop session with the sixth graders, and learning in artists. Kim Cofino kind of talked about their innovation, and they have their little system of how they go through a recipe for innovation, they call it, at YIS. And she kind of explained it, and as a vehicle for explaining it, she talked about their grade 7 MacBook Air, iPad Mini, 2-to-1 pilot. And so it looked fantastic, you know. And now I think with iOS 8, you'll be able to AirDrop from one to the other.
Yeah.
And it made a real impression on me, just seeing kids have both and just switching back and forth between one and the other. And of course, I mean that's a big expenditure per kid and everything. But you know, Chromebooks are $400 each, and maybe it doesn't have to be 2-to-1. Maybe you can have a lot of Chromebooks in carts so that it's, you know, you flip those open, they log into Google, and they're ready to go. And I don't know, I've just been thinking about that as a sort of combination, you know.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. I think the 2-to-1 discussion is very interesting. I mean, I think for us, we're going to be looking at, as we assess the program, you know, either or, but just for financial reasons. But interesting to be able to even propose a 2-to-1.
Right.
I mean, we're all 2-to-1, aren't we? I'm sure all of you guys on the exchange are 2-to-1.
At least.
Yeah, sure.
As you can see me like talking to my wife right now. She said that. My wife's sending me messages. Bring this. I forgot this. You need to bring it by after you're done.
Oh.
Actually,
We're mostly 3-to-1, really. I mean, a phone, an iPad, and a laptop. So yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the desktop too.
I'm 4-to-1 because I have a
4
cup of coffee. I count that as one device here.
You can't count your cup of coffee. Sorry.
I think the real challenge, and this is what I've encountered, is the more technology. All the teachers are also, well, if they're not 2-to-1 now, we're going to put them on both a laptop and an iPad. And I think the real challenge is to get the integration into the class. And really, because otherwise what happens is you push the technology into the hands of the teacher and into the hands of the students, and as Gary said it, without enough resources for integration, you're really left with a lot of really expensive hardware that you're not using to its full potential, and that's a real shame. And also, like, the school wouldn't want to invest more money in the technology if we don't do the integration properly. And this is a real challenge, because we also in the elementary school we have 180% integrator, and we're trying to find the time, and we're trying to do trainings, and as you said, PD is a real challenge, especially when it's not when the time that they have for PD isn't. They don't get at least some of it from the technology integrator or from the technology department, so it's harder for them, for the teachers, to really get comfortable and produce more and get better results with the iPads and with the laptops. We also have in 3rd grade, we have 1-to-1 laptops and approximately 1 laptop per 2 students. So one iPad per 2 students. So that's almost 2 to 1.
Yeah.
Still, if I take third grade, it's a good example where we have one teacher who really is every bit of equipment is used all the time for all the good reasons, and another teacher that is having a hard time because she might need a little bit more training, but we don't have enough time, and she doesn't have time after school, so it's really hard to do the professional development without really getting it organized as a system of professional development with schedules for the teachers that they can or have to attend, and really maybe like create classes according to their levels and go over subjects, so at least you'll have a baseline with all the teachers that are in a low level right now, and the teachers that are better, you can push them further, or they can even challenge us for all the things that we do and tell us what they need, and we will have to come up with new solutions.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, just thinking about, David coming into a program that's a few years old and kind of looking at how it's going. And Gary, you were talking about innovation, and I kind of feel maybe, I'm not certain, but when we brought iPads in at 1-to-1, this is a big innovation, right? Not necessarily a pedagogical innovation, but we've brought in a significant game changer into our middle school. And so the staff have adapted to it in all different ways, And one thing that's really evident is for technology to transform the learning, then the teaching has to be transformed in some way as well. And that's exciting and easy for some people, and it's really challenging and difficult for some people. And I feel like we've all, in our own way, accommodated this big innovation of the iPads, and now there's a bit of like, all right, now let me just do what I know how to do for a little while. I just did a big innovation, and I really think you have to keep on changing and keep on innovating for it to remain kind of vital,
Mm-hmm.
That's a big challenge, I think.
Well, and like someone mentioned earlier, a lot of times what you see is teachers really want to do something innovative, but they really feel stuck, or they feel like they don't know how to, and so they're like, well, just show me how. And to their credit, it's like you can't really show them how, but you can definitely show them one way or two ways or examples of other people who are doing things, or point them to resources, so they feel supported. So I think, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is this, what's the one thing that if you could choose one thing to push teachers towards innovative change, what would that one thing be? Because we could give them, you could stand up in front of a room full of teachers and tell them, literally 100 things that could help them transform their classroom. But what would be the one thing, if you had to choose just one thing to give them that would help them kind of develop it on their own? What do you think that one thing would be?
Twitter.
That's what I came to. Yeah, so what else?
Yeah.
The license to take risks.
Sorry, Gary, go ahead.
The license to take risk. And I don't know how you would package that, but I think so often, we give students the license to take risks with their learning, but we don't give teachers that same license. And is that part of how we evaluate effective teaching, that the typical evaluations and the metrics are based on kind of traditional stuff? or do we push that and reward teachers for trying new and innovative things in their classroom? I would agree with you and David that Twitter can be a game changer also in terms of access to information and developing a professional network and things like that. But how do you trigger teachers to want to change and to want to try new things?
That's my question. Like, I feel, and Mike can, I feel like in our elementary school there might be slightly more of a buzz about what's possible, and I feel like that they have to be excited. It's kind of a catch-22 or a cat chasing its tail, right? Like, they have to be successful to be excited. So what are you going to give them? What's that one thing that's going to make them successful and make them excited and create this tiny little buzz within this learning community of teachers that's going to fire things up,
I think
Twitter.
part of it's definitely that community. It's the community where you get some feedback from somebody that says, that was a really interesting idea. How do your students learn that in your class? Oh, they did this. And then when somebody sees that you're adding value, I mean, everybody wants to be known and to add value, right? And so when people, it doesn't have to be Twitter, but however they get that community access, I think it's really, really key. Even if it's just community like a PLC within your own school, where people all of a sudden are willing to go into your classroom and say, or people are willing to invite someone in and say, I'm going to do this new thing this week. Can you help me out, or can you just watch, or you know what I mean? Like, even if it's just like your little mini PLC, there's something about it. Yeah.
That's something that I've been thinking a lot about, is this whole idea of why is teaching such a privatized practice, and how do we deprivatize it? In the elementary school last year, our math coach ran something called Open Doors, where teachers signed up and they highlighted a lesson that they were doing or part of a lesson, and people over the course of a couple weeks, and people floated in and out of other classrooms, and it really triggered great conversation and innovation. How do we replicate that on a larger scale? The other thing I think that David really touched on too is that sometimes it's an individual that can trigger that change. I look at like the first grade team at AES, and where they were 2 years ago. A couple new teachers come in that are willing to try things, and suddenly you've got innovation galore.
Yeah.
I think one of the important tools that we also mentioned earlier is the timely support of having the integration, the tech coaches there, so the risk can be taken, so there's somebody to bounce an idea off of, so you don't have to feel like you're coming up with the idea, but you work collaboratively without a schedule necessarily. And that was the biggest change that we went through here a couple years ago, was freeing up the resources of people that weren't bound to a lab schedule, but instead were able to come in and out. It took a while for it to get going, but now it's so successful in the elementary that they also have hired another position to help support it, because that's the thing, that they want to do this innovation but aren't sure that they can do it. And then if they are willing to try, what happens with the 15 kids when the 3 kids are really struggling, and having that tech coach around to just be there for support has really made a difference in anything new that we try.
Yeah, and I think we touched on so many things here, but I think like the sharing aspect is huge. I think in order to, I think the social aspect is pretty huge in the classroom. Make your classroom a social environment. And so I think along with Twitter, like as a teacher tool, I think Twitter as a class tool in partnership with a classroom blog can really just start blowing things up, because if you're tweeting with other classes, chances are they're also going to have a classroom blog. And so it's going to be an avenue for this sharing and conversation to happen. And then it's going to kind of start this cycle of, well, how do we take what we're doing in class and express it in a way that we can put it on our blog, or we can tweet out the results, or we can, have this ongoing discussion, and then it leads into like collaborative workspaces like Google Docs, etc. So I think, at least in the elementary school, I've seen a lot really take off with Twitter and blog use. But I think for teachers, I'd say the same thing, like get on Twitter and start a blog.
Hey guys, I hate to do this, but I need to take off. I've got another commitment after this. It's been great, and I look forward to continuing this conversation. I'd love to have one of our chats here just really center on PD and what we're what we're looking at as far as different models and stuff go.
Yeah, I like the PD idea.
Yep.
Shall we? So I'm wondering. Let me share out or start a new agenda document that I can share out again, and we can start to develop some. I love the conversation we just had. I'm fascinated by that, and we can begin to dedicate these exchanges to different topics that we're interested in, and people can begin to choose which ones they want to come to and which ones they're interested in. And I think this is a great start. And thanks a lot, Danny, for stepping in at the last minute.
It's been my pleasure.
Thanks, Dan.
And we'll get together again in a couple weeks. Okay?
Sounds good.
Sounds great.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks a bunch, guys.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Good to see you. Good to see you, Gary.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.
And stop.